Hello and welcome to the Week 7 version of Nerding Out with Nick Botteford. I'm your host, Nick Botteford, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Dr. Adam Hutchison. He is a practicing doctor of physical therapy, writes his content at 4for4, and you can find him on Twitter at @therealadam_H. Adam, how you doing?
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah. We are going to dive right into the Five Guys segment where we talk sleepers, keepers, and everything in between. Adam, can you kick us off with the first guy that you want to talk about?
So, yeah, I mean, the first guy I'd like to kick things off with is somebody I was scooping up a lot this offseason. I didn't get too much of them in redrafts because there were some guys with similar ADPs that I liked a little bit more. I think I talked myself out of them a little bit, but is Debo Samuel, somebody that's having just a fantastic start to the 2021 season. Somebody that if you've gotten redraft, you're definitely happy. And if you held on to him in Dynasty, because I know last year was tough with some injuries, I think he's somebody that is obviously returning that value.
Yeah, so he's always been like a part of that all potential team. You know, last two seasons, I think he was bottom 2 in like average intended air yards, but top 2 in yards after catch over each of the last two seasons. And like now he's not even being used just as this gadget around the line of scrimmage. He's just a beast all over. And yeah, I won't be surprised if he's one of those guys who's, you know, on top 5% of winning teams across all formats.
Yeah, it's difficult to sorry, not to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It's difficult to quantify this, but with the Jones fracture that he had last year, he was somebody that was really fading in redraft just because I think that was going to be a tough injury for any player to come back, but specifically for a wide receiver that, like you said, a lot of his fantasy production and points come from yards after the catch. When I looked at like last year, wide receivers with over 30 targets in each of the two seasons between 2019 and 2020, there's 5 wide receivers that saw the largest decrease in their average depth of target. So those 5 guys were Curtis Samuel, David Moore, Robbie Anderson, Debo Samuel, and Allen Lazard. I think it was going to come back for Debo Samuel. He's already looking at this season compared to last season. Target share, he's according to playerprofiler.com, he's number 2 right now amongst wide receivers. His air yards is already well above what he was in 2020. And if he keeps up this pace in another 4 games, he's going to surpass even his rookie season 2019 total. So it's clear that they wanted to use him in a limited role last year when he was rehabbing that injury. But I think he's the alpha. I'm going to be tweeting a lot about Debo Samuel this weekend. If he has a big performance, I think that's going to solidify. I'm going to start taking some victory laps on him.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. And so you said he had the Jones fracture last year. Players usually have like a little dip in production the season after. Is that correct?
So he had it in the preseason. So he had it in the preseason, like very early in the preseason. I think he actually, if I remember correctly, missed a couple of games because his timeline was really close to the start of the season. So I think he might have actually started on the PUP to start the season, came off, had a limited role, and then right when he started getting going, he had a hamstring injury that also hindered him. So it was a couple different things, but I really felt like with the Jones fracture for a sophomore breakout, that was going to be tough. I have a lot of Debo in Dynasty because I liked him. And I think I talked myself out of him this offseason just with some other ADPs. I didn't get a lot of them in redraft. So my dynasty teams are happy. But in redraft, he's somebody that I honestly don't have a lot of them kicking myself for it.
Okay. All right. So first guy that I want to touch on, kind of a big name, but I've seen a lot floating around the Bird app, Twitter, on Christian McCaffrey and his workloads. And I'm seeing some people kind of trying to connect dots between the litany of injuries he's had over the last season and a half, I guess. And this is more a question just for you. Do you see any connections between, like, are compensatory injuries a thing? Was this always going to happen after the injuries he suffered last year?
Yeah, I think, and it's tough in fantasy football. We always want to, not necessarily overreact, but the pendulum swings the other way. I mean, up until last season, all everyone talked about with Christian McCaffrey is how he was like the epitome of health. I mean, he was so durable, he wasn't missing any games, and now we're seeing some things string together, which could they be tied to his workload? I mean, I think certainly they could be. I mean, there's probably other circumstances, but last year he had a couple of injuries that were unrelated, that were really bad luck, and I think what you're seeing this year is he has a hamstring injury, which is tough. And I think, hindsight's always 2020. I think it was a borderline, probably grade 1, grade 2 hamstring strain, and instead of putting him on IR, they were going to see if they could get him back in 2 weeks. He probably pushed it. I don't know if necessarily a re-aggravation, but he probably just wasn't ready, and they elected to, what you should do with a soft tissue injury is just let him heal up. So they put him on IR, and I get that it's frustrating, but I've talked a lot about it on Twitter and a lot on 4for4, where I think when Christian McCaffrey comes off IR, and I think he should come back when he's eligible in 3 weeks, we could be getting the old Christian McCaffrey. They probably do use Chuba Hubbard a little bit to help with his workload, but for a guy like him that's involved in the passing game and can break off any play, even if he sees a dip in his workload a little bit, I think the efficiency is going to help him with his fantasy numbers.
Cool. Okay, hit me with your second guy.
So my second guy, people are probably annoyed with me if you follow me on Twitter, because this is the only guy I ever talk about. But it's another wide receiver. He's somebody that went to my alma mater, somebody I'm a big fan of. Obviously in Dynasty, but I think even in redraft a little bit, I'm getting excited about him, trying to scoop him up, and that's Rondale Moore of the Arizona Cardinals. He's just somebody that I think every time they give him a little bit more work, he does a little bit more with it. There's a lot of targets, competitions there. I think Christian Kirk is finally having that breakout season that we wanted to have. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is the the alpha dog there. The one that I think is probably hurting Rondale Moore a little bit is AJ Green. But just looking at the way they've been using Rondale Moore, his snaps, his snaps percentage over the last 3 weeks, 42%, 48%, 56%. We're seeing that uptick in usage. What I really like is that getting involved in the rushing game over that time. He had 2 carries for 9 yards, and he had 3 carries for 38 yards and 3 carries for 10 yards. So Cliff Kingsbury is definitely designing ways to get him the ball. Obviously, as a Purdue fan, I watched a lot around his draft stock and during the draft process, and they had a cool behind the scenes look when they were getting ready to draft Rondale Moore. Cliff Kingsbury talked about 2 things that really stood out to me. It was, one, he's a difference maker when you get the ball in his hands. And he said something, and I'm abbreviating, but along the lines of essentially like, if you find ways to get him the ball, he's going to do a lot of great things with them. And I think he recognized that early, and that's a situation that he had to go to. I think you have to manufacture touches for Rondale Moore a little bit. When you do, it's beneficial. And then the other thing is Kyler Murray is a big fan of Rondale Moore. He liked his ability to be able to separate. I think Kyler Murray recognizes that he's got an elite talent on that team. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a little bit up and down, but I think even in redraft, he's somebody, you never want to wish for injuries, but if somebody like a Christian Kirk or an AJ Green got hurt, he sees a huge uptick in his snaps and routes run. He's somebody that could be really, I don't want to say a league winner, but somebody that could definitely help your team come fantasy playoff season.
Yeah, I think so too. I love Rondale Moore. In terms of his usage, they're still keeping him as a returner, which is exciting from maybe a kick return TD standpoint. But
sure.
do you have any concerns about that, as like him taking a head-on collision, or are you just happy to see him get as many touches as he can?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for different guys. If you're somebody like a Deontay Johnson for the Pittsburgh Steelers, where sometimes I know they've used him in a punt returning duty. When you know Deontay Johnson is going to get the volume is already there. You get a little bit nervous about, a guy doing a kick return or punt return. With somebody like Rondale Moore that's, fighting for production, I think every snap that you can get him on the field is something that you can look forward to as a fantasy manager of his. So it's not something I think is ideal. You'd like for him to just get those points, playing a traditional wide receiver role. But I think it's something, like you said, yeah, obviously if he sneaks one off, that's a free 6 points that you get that week if he's able to score.
Yeah. All right. So my guy number 2 is Travis Kelce, who, I don't need to tell anybody to start him, but it's my understanding that he suffered stingers in like the shoulder / neck area in each of the last 2 weeks. And I don't know if that was on the same side of the body. But in your opinion, is this something that we should be kind of just like mentally keeping track of, or are stingers such a regular part of the game that it's not anything that we should really worry about?
Yeah, I think stingers are really a football injury. And typically they don't result in a lot of missed time. I don't see too many of them in the clinic myself because I usually am not doing on the field assessments or things like that. I know with some athletic trainers that I work with in my practice or know personally that are doing those things, they have a little bit more of a clinical understanding of what's going on there. But usually I don't see him because by the time I would see him, like for a high school guy, a game on Friday, by the time Monday rolls around or Tuesday rolls around, they're pretty much asymptomatic. They hurt. They don't feel good. They certainly can take you out of games if you're having trouble lifting your arm or moving your arm just because of pain. But it's something that obviously if you had a litany of them, you worry about that connective tissue and soft tissue around the neck and shoulder area becoming a little more lax and a little bit more susceptible to those type of injuries. But it's not something that I think you need to have a red flag or even like a caution flag about. I think, like you said, it's just kind of a part of the game. Okay.
All right, cool. Hit me with your guy number 3.
Yep. So it's funny that you're talking about, stinger injuries. The guy that I'm really excited about, because in a lot of redraft leagues, I kind of emptied the clip on him to get him, and it hasn't really paid off thus far. But I think he's the guy in the San Francisco backfield, and that's Elijah Mitchell. He's somebody that I was really interested in during the pre-draft process before we figured out where he was going to go. I'm a Purdue fan, but both my parents went to Iowa State, so I watch a lot of Iowa State football. And when Iowa State played Louisiana last year, he absolutely tore him up. He's somebody that had a huge game, was running all over them, and Louisiana actually upset Iowa State and won that game. I didn't love the landing spot. Obviously didn't love the draft capital. He's going to San Francisco where they have Jeff Wilson Jr., who then gets hurt. They have Raheem Mostert, who's been their guy traditionally, and is known as that slasher back that fits the system. And then they also draft Trey Sermon, but he's flat out balled out when he's been called upon, above 60% snap share in every game that he's been healthy and playing. I think he's clearly the running back that they want to use. He's pretty much relegated Trey Sermon to the bench in games that he has suited up. I think he's the RB that you want to own in San Francisco as long as he's healthy. And I think we finally start to see now that he is healthy and being able to get over that stinger and / AC joint sprain and shoulder injury that he was dealing with. I think he's going to be the guy that you want on your redraft teams and maybe even some dynasty teams if he's able to ball out for the whole season.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that those of us who did draft him in Dynasty, like that's going to be an act that pays dividends for years to come. I don't know what I was super high on Trey Sermon, and I thought Elijah Mitchell was like a sneaky guy to add, but like all my teams are hurting with Sermon. I was able to get Mitchell off waivers in some of them, but I wish I had foresight on that one.
Yeah, I've only been playing Dynasty for about 3 years. And every time I think I know a lot, I learn something new each season about draft classes and about talents. And two guys that, and this is going way back to the 2020 rookie draft, but guys that I was like really targeting that didn't pan out were Anthony McFarland and Joshua Kelly, because I thought I really liked those landing spots. I didn't necessarily like the talent so much, but I liked those landing spots behind James Conner, who kind of struggled with injuries, and before that, even Austin Eckler, who was used more in like a third down role, not necessarily a bell cow role. And I missed on two of those guys. And then we came into this draft here, and two guys that I really liked pre-draft process, and Kenny Gainwell and Elijah Mitchell, did not get the draft capital I like, so I kind of writ them off. I don't have a lot of them in Dynasty. So it's about tweaking the process. And I know they always say draft the talent, not necessarily a landing spot, but there's things that play into that and kind of change our decision. But yeah, learning things every year, and it'll be interesting to see what this 2022 class looks like, and how I'm able to navigate those rookie drafts maybe a little bit better.
Cool. All right. So my number 3, speaking of landing spots, is Julio Jones, who landed in Tennessee seemingly with access to a massive workload. There were some folks on Twitter. One guy who was on this in like August was Dr. Jesse Morse, and I know he made some headlines in fantasy Twitter a little while ago. But with the Titans, he seemed to have been onto something with their hamstring protocols kind of being subpar. He also has talked about what's called, I guess, a dry needling procedure, where you kind of break up the scar tissue. And I'm inferring by Julio's repeated hamstrings this season that he probably didn't end up getting that dry needling procedure done. Can you expand on your thoughts on Julio's hamstring, and if you got any just eggs of knowledge on hamstrings generally that you want to crack? I'd like to hear those too.
Yeah. I think hamstring injuries are really tough. And I think because the muscle belly of that specific muscle group is so big and vast, that even if you think you've gotten to some of those trigger points with dry needling, like we were talking about, or stretched it out, really when you have a muscle tear that's in there and scar tissue, kind of forms, it hurts the integrity of that whole muscle. And it's a big muscle, so it's hard to really get to those spots. I think Julio struggled with hamstring injuries. And I tweeted a little bit about it. The average same season reoccurrence rate for wide receivers in the NFL going back to 2018 in terms of hamstring injuries. So like, they had an hamstring injury, they come off of an injury report, they play at least one game, and then they have another hamstring injury that causes them to miss time. It's about 20%. That's the average that we've seen since 2018. For Julio Jones, that number's been 75%. Like, he's somebody that has always kind of come back and had these hamstring injuries afflict him in multiple weeks. And even going back to 2020, he had 4 separate instances of reoccurrences where he came back for a game, missed a game, came back for a game, missed a game, came back for a game, missed 3 games, and then came back. So I think he's just somebody, for whatever reason, struggles with those injuries and maybe tries to push it. Because he's a competitor. I mean, he wants to get out there. He wants to get paid. He wants to play football. But especially as he gets a little bit on the tail end of his career here, I wouldn't be surprised. We saw him leave the Monday night game with another hamstring flare-up. I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody that maybe similar to what Carolina did with Christian McCaffrey, where the Titans just say, hey, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but we're going to just kind of remove you from the situation and kind of save you for yourself, put you on IR for a couple of weeks, let you get healthy so you're not having to battle this all season long. For whatever the case might be, that just happens with some guys, and it's part of the game. But I think, past injuries are the biggest indicator of future injuries. So it's plausible that, Julio Jones might have these issues come up again.
Okay. All right. Number 4 guy, if you please. Oh yeah. With the whistle there.
Man, I had to get it. Yeah, I think a guy that is definitely been, has been kind of an interesting waiver wire pickup, because I don't think a lot of guys had him. Somebody that I was able to scoop up in a couple of leagues. I'm excited to have him is Cordell Patterson of the Atlanta Falcons. I think the most exciting part is And he did a little bit of this in New England. He did a little bit more of it in Chicago, and Atlanta seems to be more satisfied to use him in that running back role. And if you're on Twitter and you surely play fantasy football, then you follow Ian Hartitz of PFF, who's been like a big Cordell Patterson fan and truther. He says that he was always a running back. He was just being used as a wide receiver. And I tend to agree with that. I think, we were trying to find everyone was trying to find the sneaky backup running back in Atlanta, because you thought at some point the wheels were going to fall off with Mike Davis. When we were drafting guys like Javian Hawkins or, I don't even know.
Audrey Allison.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And it's like the guy was always right there in front of us. It was Cordell Patterson. Yeah. He was the one. I love when they use him in the running back role. Receiving, I mean, he's seeing about 7 targets a game, rushing the ball, especially last week with Calvin Ridley not there in London. Saw 14 rushing attempts. I think that number probably comes back down. But if you've got a guy that's getting somewhere between 7 to 10 rushing attempts a game, and then seeing on top of that 6 targets a game, that's somebody that's going to be, whether he's a running back, a wide receiver, or you flex in PPR leagues, is going to be valuable for fantasy.
Yeah, he's a beast. It's fun. It took a while, but it's fun to see him get used properly. As you were saying, like, he was always a running back, and it's a bummer because I think Mike Davis is great. I think Seattle never should have let him go. It should have held on to J.D. McKissick too. But, it's cool to see Patterson get the job done out here. Sure. So someone that you and I have discussed for my number 4 previously on Twitter is Antonio Gibson. And a few days ago, I was thinking, like, Monday or after the game on Sunday, I was thinking, like, he's got to go on injured reserve. And because he had that like big setback in game, and I think people want to know what to do with him, and I don't know what to tell them. So what do you? There seem to be conflicting reports. Was it like an impact? Like, did he get cleated? Is this actually just wear and tear? Is it shin splints? What do you think of, with all the current information, the status is of Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and I get it. I don't think I have a great response either, because if you have them, and I have them in a couple leagues, you're in to be blunt, you're in a crappy situation. I mean, because there's nothing you can really do. You can't trade away Antonio Gibson at this point. You're never going to get, good value on him. You'll be lucky if you get 50 cents on the dollar, because somebody in your league is going to try to lowball you, knowing that he's injured. So I think as long as he's out there, you got to play him. I don't know the exact injury that he had. Washington's playing pretty coy with us in terms of the injury that he had. Is it shin splints? Does he have a stress fracture? What's going on with some of the usage? I think it's probably going to be frustrating this season. He is somebody that is going to continue to Wednesday to be, a DNP. I don't think you're going to see him practice a lot of Wednesdays. You might not see him practice some Thursdays, definitely getting some limited practices. But if he's getting a limited practice in by Friday, I think you can expect for him to be available for you. And that's what happened this week. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Today, he got a limited practice. And so I think you got to keep putting him out there. You got to know that there's potential. He's definitely volatile. He could leave for a series or two, or leave for a quarter or two, because he has some type of injury that sets him back. But I think Washington has made the decision. Antonio Gibson's made a decision that they feel like they can manage this as long as Washington's relevant, and he's going to continue to try to push through it and be out there and play snaps. And like I said, I think it hurts his RB1 ceiling that a lot of people were hoping for this year. I don't think we're going to see that. Just because they're going to limit his workload with J.D. McKissick and just the amount of carries that they're going to give him. But he's somebody that I think could still certainly be fantasy viable. So if you have him, you just got to keep putting him out there and pray for the best. Okay.
All right. Close this out here. Give me your guy number 5.
Yep. So my guy number 5 is somebody that I think was kind of disappointing to start the season, and people were getting a little bit worried about him, but we've seen him in terms of the usage start to take an uptick, and that's Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he's somebody that's been a popular name this week. A lot of people are talking about him. He's somebody that I've been trying to hold on to. I was worried those first couple of weeks because Kenny Gainwell was balling out and being a lot involved in the passing game. But the last 2 weeks, he's had over a 75% snap percentage. He's getting the rushing attempts. He's, the team's leading rusher, and now we're starting to see a little bit more involvement in that passing game work, which we knew he was capable of doing. But maybe Kenny Gainwell is a little bit better of a receiving down back or a better receiver, which is fine. I mean, you need some guys that can spell him. He hasn't had a touchdown this season. I mean, that's really what's been hurting him, and the Eagles' offense has been stymied a little bit. And I think Jalen Hurts potentially could cap that as well, because we know those rushing quarterbacks, especially if the team's running an RPO, the quarterback has a tendency to tuck it and keep it. But I think Miles Sanders is somebody that, from a volume standpoint, from just an overall usage standpoint for a running back RB2 on your team, which is probably what you drafted him to be. He's been that. The touchdowns just haven't been there, which has hurt the fantasy production. So I would just tell people to keep chugging him, keep putting him in his lineup. He might be somebody that you could buy potentially low if somebody is just super frustrated with him. I think he's somebody that doesn't have a massive ceiling, but certainly you could do worse at your RB2 position than Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I think he's got a chance to finish in top 24 at the position this week. They're playing the Raiders, and evidently they were counting on Gerald McCoy to fill a big hole. And I think he tore his ACL, I think in week 1 or something in his knee early in the season, and running backs to kind of run all over him. So it might be a splash play week for him. My final running back or player is running back Nick Chubb, who, as far as I understand, he suffered a calf strain. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
And are those volatile? Is this should I be panicking like a hamstring injury?
It's similar. I think he certainly suffered a less severe injury than what Kareem Hunt did, just by the fact that they put him on IR. I think when we're grading those soft tissue injuries, they're usually on a 3-point scale. Kareem Hunt probably suffered something closer to a grade 2 strain, which is going to be a longer recovery time, probably looking at somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks. For Nick Chubb, you're probably looking at something closer to 1 to 3 weeks for him to come back from.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on the show. And everybody should go follow him again at @therealadam_H. I'll talk to you soon, Adam.
Hey, Nick, appreciate you having me anytime.
Cool. All right. I'm going to turn over here just to the rest of the full game slate here. And Adam, you're free to log off. Yeah,
man,
we're good to go.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. If you ever need anything from me, just let me know. All right.
I will absolutely take you up on that. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good one, man.
All right. See ya. Okay. So Thursday night kickoff is in 45 minutes or so. I don't think I have too many lineup decisions that I have to make for that, but we'll see if I make any in real time with you guys. So going to the 10 a.m. slate Sunday morning, 10 a.m. PST, that is. We are kicking things off with, sorry, everybody trying to find it. I think it is the Carolina. Yeah, Carolina. No, New York Jets at New England Patriots. So I think this is just going to be a rinse and repeat of their week 2 date where Bill Belichick just said, okay, we're going to lock down Corey Davis and make this team try to beat us by, throwing it to anybody other than Corey Davis. And the Jets absolutely were not able to do that. So for me, this is just like kind of a do not enter region. Zack Wilson, I've got him ranked as a quarterback 3. Corey Davis, he has the talent and he'll probably have the volume to get the job done here. Like, I think his target totals the last few weeks are 7, 7, 10, and 7 or something like that. We need a little bit more. We probably need, a sure 10 for us to feel good as it starting him as like his wide receiver, high-end wide receiver 3 self, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So I have him as a volatile wide receiver 4. Next week, he'll hop back to that, wide receiver 25 region. As far as the rest of the pass catching goes, I thought this was really interesting. The Establish the Run guys brought this up in their AFC East or AFC team by team recap podcast earlier this week, where even the coaching staff was talking about the fact that Elijah Moore is being played out of position, that they're like, he can play the Z receiver role, but he really is a slot receiver. They're not using him there because they kept Jamison Crowder. So it's just stunting his growth. Jamison Crowder is what he is. He can help a team, but they have their heir apparent in the slot and they're just not using him anymore. So I'm not starting any of these guys against the New England Patriots. Tight end Ryan Griffin, not a fantasy factor. When it comes to the running backs, Michael Carter and Ty Johnson are efficiently separating from Tevin Coleman. Coleman is just kind of flailing back there on the handful of touches that he gets. And this is not like, usually we want to avoid three-way committees. Calling it a committee is generous. This is not like the Miami backfield. So Michael Carter, I think that you can start him as, given the 6 teams on bye, I think you can start him as a high-end running back 3 this week. I believe he did all right in their first outing when they played in week 2. Let's see here. Carter ended up, 59 rushing yards, some a little in the receiving game, but he's become pretty consistent. And I've got a table in there that kind of just outlines this backfield usage, but it's Michael Carter, high-end running back 3 this week. Ty Johnson, I think he's running back 4. No, I have him as mid to high running back 3, because I think both are getting some red zone usage, but Tevin Coleman, you could just drop. On the Patriots side of things, I think Mac Jones, he'll be really efficient, but the Patriots are just going to go for a ground and pound, like grind the win out, kill the clock as fast as they can. So I've got him as a back-end quarterback too. Jacoby Myers has 52 targets this season. That is 22 more than any other Patriot. The touchdowns are going to come. I think against the Jets, he remains his high floor wide receiver 3 self, but this is as good of a matchup as any for him to find the end zone. It's as efficient of a matchup as any, but he's not going to see a lot of passing game volume. So it's possible he just gets you like 10 half-point PPR points and calls it a day. Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne. Sorry, guys, I got the dishwasher going in the background. But Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, I've got them as wide receiver 6s. They're just not going to be called upon very often because I don't think the Jets are going to be too perky. N'Keal Harry shouldn't even be on an NFL roster, much less your fantasy football team. Jonnu Smith has blocked on 75.9% of his offensive snaps over the last 2 weeks. He's got 3 targets in the last 2 weeks. Hunter Henry has 10. He's blocking 2, but he's also just running a ton of routes. Henry's the guy to own here, and he is a mid-tier tight end 1. As far as the backfield goes, Damien Harris is still the lead back here, and I don't think that fantasy managers should panic too much about the emergence of Ramondre Stevenson. What I think we might see with Stevenson is Stevenson's getting more time, but it's more so coming at the expense of Brandon Bolden than it is Damien Harris. Then it is Damien Harris. I have that right. Ramondre Stevenson is seeing more time, and he's taking snaps and most importantly, routes run and target totals from Brandon Bolden. He's not taking it from Damien Harris. So I think Damien Harris, his truck stick is going to be going this week against the Jets. I like him as a high-end running back 2. And I think that Ramondre Stevenson is a mid-range running back 3. Bolden is now like RB 37 probably this week. I think we might be seeing Bolden, who has always been a special teamer. He's been in the league for like 8 seasons. And he's been a special teamer for ages. And I think the team wants to work him back there. What Stevenson needs to do to keep this gig as like the James White guy is work on his ball security, because he has fumbled the ball away a handful of times. Okay, on to Carolina Panthers. So they're teeing off against the New York Giants. Sam Darnold, his usage isn't really any different over the last 2 weeks than it was in the first 4 weeks of the season. The issue is he just hasn't found the end zone by rushing. He had that beautiful comeback towards the end of the week 6 contest that took him from like 9 fantasy points to 16. It's clear that he's not the long-term answer there, but I think against the Giants, he can get the job done as like a high-end quarterback 2, back-end quarterback 1. James Bradbury, lockdown cornerback of the New York Giants, is just not having the season, the typical season that he has had in the last couple of years. So I'm not at all, I wouldn't be worried about DJ Moore anyway, but I'm definitely not worried about him this week. He's top 5 in targets, catches, 7th in receiving yards with 513. He's in every week wide receiver 1. Robbie Anderson has 28 targets over the last 3 weeks. That's tied for 8th most in the NFL. He's caught a handful of them. He's as buy low as a buy low can be. Of course, he is volatile because of his downfield role, though, and Sam Darnold can have a scatter shot arm. Terrace Marshall is in the concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to play. Backup slot receiver Brandon Zylstra was placed on injured reserve with a hamstring injury, so Alex Erickson is going to be filling in. I've only got him as a wide receiver 6, though. I don't think he's very good. End of story. Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas. They could take some snaps with the injuries at slot receiver. They're boom bust tight end 2s. Chuba Hubbard has solidified himself as a lead threat dual back, which is helpful against the New York Giants. Giants have allowed 122.5 rushing yards per game, 4th most in the NFL. But receiving backs like J.D. McKissick, Cordell Patterson, Mike Davis, Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson, I've got all their info in here, but running backs who are proficient in the receiving game have pummeled this front 7. So given the fact that Chuba Hubbard is now seeing passing game looks, which he was not when he first took over, Rodney Smith had that weird 5 for 5, catch target game. Hubbard is now a high end. No, actually, I've got him as a running back 10 this week, not just a running back 2. He's the running back 10, back end running back 1. Royce Freeman is clearly running as the number 2. He has done so in each of the last 2 weeks. He's running routes. He's on the field. He's not getting very many touches, but he has put Rodney Smith like completely on the bench. Daniel Jones totally flopped last week. 3 interceptions, 1 fumble against the Rams. The Panthers defense is good. It's not the Rams. But I'm counting Daniel Jones as a low end quarterback 2. They've got some offensive injuries as well. It's a tough matchup. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. So Sterling Shepard showed up on the injury report again this week. He was off the injury report on Wednesday. Then he went on the injury report. He showed up on the injury report Thursday. I think it's a hamstring injury again. He was a limited participant. Pay very close attention to what happens on Friday. If he is a DNP, he's not playing. If he's limited, then he may have suffered like a mild setback, but is still going to play. If active, he saw 14 targets last week. Kadarius Toney is going to be out. Kenny Golladay is going to be out. I think that Sterling Shepard can get back to that like mid to low teen range for targets. As far as Darius Slayton goes, it looks like he's going to be back. I think he's volatile because of the fact that he's a downfield receiver, but he could finish as a wide receiver 3 this week. Probably safer to expect wide receiver 4 production, though. Colin Johnson, John Ross, and Dante Pettis are all going to cycle in, but I'm not starting any of them in redraft. If Sterling Shepard is out, you could maybe consider Dante Pettis, who saw a bunch of targets last week, but he's probably going to go back to special teams. Evan Ingram, not usable in fantasy, and he was a DNP in practice today. Devonte Booker, he got dual threat work. He had 12 carries, 4 targets last week. Elijah Penny, number 2 running back on the team right now, had 3 carries and 2 targets. Also, per ProFootballFocus.com, Booker had 30 routes run to Penny's 9. So it's not close in the backfield here. I know Devonte Booker kind of let you down last week, probably finished just under 10 half-point PPR points if you have normal scoring rules, but Shaq Thompson, who is one of their rangy linebackers, he's registered back-to-back DNPs with a foot injury. I don't think he's going to play. That will make it a little bit easier for Devonte Booker to get going on the ground. So don't be afraid to start Devonte Booker again this week as like a mid to high running back 2. I probably got him around running back 13, maybe 15. Kansas City Chiefs at Tennessee Titans. This one is as good of a matchup as you can ever ask for. I mean, it's one of the best when it comes to the Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes obviously is going to be a quarterback one, but I think that he has we've seen some guys kind of push him for the overall quarterback one spot. And I think that this is a week that he's got a really high chance one or a quarterback two ranking. Reason being, Tennessee is allowing 22.5 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, fifth most in the NFL, and they have a decent offense that can push the pace on them. So yeah, I like Mahomes a lot here. Tyree Kill, he, I believe, was DNP on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. He did the same thing last week, but still played. He was on a snap count, but he finished as the wide receiver 12. Best guess as to what he's dealing with here is a contusion, but if he continues to miss time, it might actually be a strain. Strain would be a lot worse because that could get re-aggravated. If it's a contusion, then that probably means that they're draining the quad of blood because it's swelling like crazy. It refills quickly, so maybe that's why he was missing some time during the game last week. But because I think he actually spent some time in the locker room, like in the second quarter or maybe beginning of the third, and they might just be draining it and then putting him back out there. Anyway, Tennessee Titans are allowing 42.3 half-point PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. That is the most in the NFL by a 2.5 point margin. Last week, their margin was only 2 points ahead of the NFL. So that impossibly large number actually grew. Tyree Kill, safe top three wide receiver this week across all formats. Mikol Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, Josh Gordon. Mikol Hardman is the guy to consider here as like a borderline wide receiver 3/4. Hardman has seen 5 red zone targets over the last 3 weeks. He is even in end zone targets with Tyree Kill, though, 2 over the last 2 weeks. That's really promising. That's, not typically he's just kind of the field stretcher guy. So it's nice to see that they're actually getting him some juice in scoring position. Again, we've been here before with Mikol Hardman, but if you are in need of a wide receiver 4, this is the week to do it. Demarcus Robinson scored a touchdown this week, again, with Tennessee allowing the most half-point PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. If you need a wide receiver 5, he's probably your guy. Byron Pringle, DFS option. Josh Gordon could get it done here. I think he's still going to be on a snap count. We already covered the Travis Kelce stinger situation in the 5 guys segment. I encourage everybody to go back, listen to it again, try to reabsorb all that info. But basically, we shouldn't really worry about it. Stingers are a football injury. They're pretty standard. And yeah, he's going to be okay. Elite tight end 1. Darrell Williams, 59 snaps. Higher than anything that Clyde Edwards-Helaire had seen through the 2021 season. 21 carries, 4 targets, 29 routes, 7 blocking reps, all higher than anything Clyde Edwards-Helaire has seen this season. I think Darrell Williams might be forcing a timeshare at this point. The team clearly feels more comfortable using him in all facets of the game. CEH can get it done in the right scenario with the right coaching staff, but this does not look like it's his home for very long. So I have Darrell Williams. Obviously, CEH is on injured reserve for another 2 games at least, but I'm talking about when he comes back. I think Williams could make this a 1-2 punch, and Williams might even be the starter. For week 7, I have Darrell Williams ranked as the number 6 running back in my rankings. Tennessee Titans, big thing to talk about here. We already kind of covered Julio Jones's hamstring injury. I don't think he's going to play this week, and he might not play next week. Regardless, the Kansas City Chiefs defense is as bad as it gets. Their PDNEFF pass defense rating, Nerdball's trademark stat, or one of our trademark stats, is 37.4%. That is 4th worst in the NFL. They have allowed 23 explosive pass plays, which is tied for 9th most per sharpfootballstats.com. It's fair to point out that Chris Jones, stud defensive lineman of the Chiefs, has returned. He's got a hand/wrist injury. He's returned to practice this week, probably will play, but rangy coverage linebacker Anthony Hitchens is now on the injury report with a triceps injury. I think he's going to miss, and hey, that could increase the chances of a 75-yard Derrick Henry screen pass to the house. So I think, look, maybe you don't want to bet on that. I think that Derrick Henry is a good bet to rip off another 50 whatever yard gain. Hopefully it's through the air. So Ryan Tannehill, I think that he is a quiet tight end 1. quiet quarterback one this week. I recommend a stack with him, AJ Brown, and Derrick Henry in DFS. So AJ Brown probably going to be riding solo like Jason Derulo with Julio Jones sidelined. Now he did not practice again this week due to the food poisoning that is ravaging his body. He did not practice Wednesday and Thursday. He's going to play. They'll load him up with Imodium and get him out there. And I think that he is an elite wide receiver one this week. He was not on a snap count last week. As far as the fellow or the rest of the wide receivers go, so Josh Reynolds was filling in for Julio Jones, but they benched him for former Indianapolis Colt Marcus Johnson. I think Marcus Johnson will keep that role, and Josh Reynolds is just going to be riding the pine. I mean, maybe he gets a couple snaps here and there, but they clearly were not pleased with what they were getting out of Josh Reynolds, and Marcus Johnson has taken that job. I think he's a wide receiver 5, but does deserve DFS consideration. Chester Rogers started the week off with it, did not participate. I failed to write down what the injury was. I think it was groin. I think it was a soft tissue injury. Given the fact that it's soft tissue, I'm double checking as we speak. Yeah, it was a groin injury. So he's not going to play. And what that means is, so last week, Nick Westbrook-Akine took over for Chester Rogers, and he did decently. Slot receivers so here's the thing, Tyrann Mathieu, free safety for the Kansas City Chiefs. Sometimes he plays in the slot, but I think that he's going to be giving his attention to AJ Brown more often than not, which means that L'Jarius Sneed and Daniel Sorensen are going to be the ones covering Nick Westbrook-Akine. And to be fair, I guess AJ Brown, because AJ Brown goes in and out, but Tyrann Mathieu will probably be on for that. Doesn't matter. He's an elite wide receiver one. But as far as Nick Westbrook-Akine goes, Sneed and Sorensen have allowed 15 of 22 targets in the slot to go for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns this season. NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akine does deserve some DFS consideration. I think he and Johnson they might even be wide receiver 4s. Anthony Ferkser is ahead of Michael Pruitt and Jeff Swaim on the tight end. Anthony Ferkser is ahead of Michael Pruitt and Jeff Swaim on the depth chart. He's the clear-cut number 1 tight end. They will see some work, but he is the number 1 passing game tight end. Kansas City Chiefs are allowing 15.2 half-point PPR points per game to the position, which is tied for the 5th most. So if you need a streaming tight end option, Anthony Ferkser is your guy. As far as the running back situation goes, it's Derrick Henry. He is RB1 across all formats. In our rankings and in our hearts and in points scored. Kansas City Chiefs 30.90 RD NEFF run defense efficiency score is 4th worst in the NFL, just like their pass defense. He is going to rock the house. As far as the backfield goes, we need to just keep in mind that Jeremy McNichols, I believe, suffered some sort of injury, and I'll double check his status right now. Darrington Evans is scheduled to come off of injured reserve this week. It has to be done, I believe, this week. McNichols, don't have his injury info in front of me, but I think that Evans, given the fact that McNichols, who was crushing it, given the fact that he suffered an injury, makes me think that Darrington Evans might actually be handed. Here I go again, saying that before I realize what it is. So McNichols suffered, I think, a low grade or low lateral ankle sprain, because listed as an ankle on the injury report, DNP on Wednesday, limited participant on Thursday. So he and Darrington Evans, I guess they're going to be competing for number 2 duties. Jeremy McNichols has been great. Darrington Evans, I don't know. We'll see. Both of them should be rostered. I'll say that. Washington Football at Green Bay Packers. Taylor Heineke, he has been up and down, but Green Bay Packers are missing Zadarius Smith, Yair Alexander, and safety Darnell Savage, likely, who is in the concussion protocol. I think that Heineke is a volatile but high-end quarterback too this week. Terry McLaurin, so he had a hamstring injury but played on 95% of the team snaps. He is a wide receiver 1. If they had Yair Alexander, it might be a different story, but they don't. So he is a locked-in wide receiver 1. Turns out DeAndre Carter is a flash of the pan, and I am a moron. So Diami Brown and Adam Humphries filled in as they returned to numbers 2 and 3 wide receiver duties in week 6. Brown is a wide receiver 5.
Humphries is a low ceiling wide receiver 6. Ricky Seals-Jones has seen 19 targets over the last 3 weeks. He's only rostered somehow in 29% of Yahoo fantasy formats. You all need to go add him. If you need a tight end, which most teams do, he is the guy. He is being treated as though he's Logan Thomas. You need to add him. He's a mid to high tight end 1. As far as the running backs go, we talked about this earlier. Antonio Gibson, I've got him as a volatile running back too. He could miss at any moment, but he could also come in and run ramshod over a Green Bay Packers front 7, whose RDNEFF run defense efficiency metric ranks 5th worst in the NFL. J.D. McKissic, I've got him as like a mid to high running back 2 this week. He's going to see more carries, and he saw a season high 10 targets last week. I think Jarrett Patterson must be rostered, across all formats. But this week, given that Antonio Gibson is trending towards playing, I have Patterson as a running back 4. Green Bay Packers side of things, the Washington football team has allowed 1,857 passing yards and 16 passing touchdowns, both highest marks in the NFL. Rodgers is a quarterback 1. Devontae Adams, King Kong week incoming. Allen Lazard seemingly separated from the rest of the group a little bit. I still have him as a volatile wide receiver 4, as I do Randall Cobb. I think he'll be, a safety blanket. Amari Rodgers is a wide receiver 6. Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis are now in a tight end timeshare. Both of them are tight end 3s. I don't mean tight end number 3. I mean worse than tight end 24. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are also in a timeshare. I think it's a 1A, 1B situation. It has been 4 weeks since Aaron Jones saw more than 15 carries, but he is regularly seeing usage in the passing game. So he is a back end running back 1 this week in an above average matchup. I think that he would drop down to a high end running back 2 if 6 teams were not on bye. AJ Dillon is a high end running back 3 with top 24 upside. Atlanta Falcons at Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins cornerbacks Byron Jones and Xavier Howard have returned to practice. That makes Matt Ryan a mid to low quarterback 2. Calvin Ridley, just a mid-tier wide receiver 2 this week. He's not getting the downfield looks he was last season. We'll see how things go. They obviously unlocked or they just continued throwing the ball to Kyle Pitts as they had been all year, and it finally hit. They had the bye week this last week to plan things out. So maybe Ridley can solidify his status as a wide receiver 1 again, but right now I have him as a wide receiver 2. In terms of Olamide Zaccheaus and Russell Gage, both of them are underwhelming wide receiver 6s. Kyle Pitts, high-end tight end 1, and Hayden Hurst is like a tight end 2 this week. Miami's defense is allowing 13.4 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. That's 8th most in the NFL. If you need a streaming option in the worst way, you could go for Hayden Hurst, but there are better options like Ricky Seals-Jones. Mike Davis, Cordell Patterson. I've got Patterson as the RB11. We already talked about why he is so good, but Miami's front 7 is allowing 112.5 rushing yards to opposing backfield, 7th most in the NFL, 1.2 rushing TDs per game, tied for 3rd most. 6 receptions, 45.7 receiving yards to opposing running backs as well, which is both marks are 11th most in the NFL. Cordell Patterson going to rock it. Mike Davis, I think he's even a mid-range running back 2 this week. As far as the Miami Dolphins goes, the rumors around Tua Tagovailoa continue to swirl. We have no idea what's going on there. Atlanta Falcons defense is 25th in PDNEFF pass defense efficiency, though, and their quarterback pressure rate is 29th. So I think Tua is a streaming quarterback too. Devontae Parker missed 2 weeks with a hamstring injury, but he is now back and he's on track to play in week 7. I've got him as a wide receiver 4 with wide receiver 3 upside. Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, wide receiver / tight end here, will be running routes in the slot as normal. What's nice about this team is that Miami is running 12 personnel, i.e. 2 tight end sets, 46% of the time. That's the highest mark in the NFL, leaves a very narrow passing tree. And the Atlanta Falcons are playing with a backup backup nickel corner. So yeah, Waddle is a high-end wide receiver 3. Mike Gesicki is a mid to high tight end 1. This is a 3-way running back committee this week. They only use Myles Gaskin heavily when there's a vaunted pass rush running across from them. That is not the case with the Atlanta Falcons. Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens. So fun matchup here with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, both having completion percentages above expectation in the top 10. Burrow is number 7 with a CPAE mark of 4.3%. Baltimore's defense is ravaged by injuries. I have Joe Burrow as a locked-in quarterback 1. Jamar Chase's 47.7 team air yards share is second in the NFL. His 553 receiving yards and are third in the NFL, and 5 touchdowns are tied for 4th. He is also the number 1 receiver in our NECC consistency rankings, I believe, with a standard deviation of 1.2%. He's the locked-in wide receiver 1 every week. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are taking looks from each other. Oh, excuse me. Actually, T. Higgins has started to separate. As of last week, T. Higgins has started to separate, but Tyler Boyd gets to square off against Ravens slot corner Tavon Young. Young is now battling a knee injury and already was not good. He's had a bunch of knee issues in the past. So both of these guys are back end wide receiver 3s. CJ Uzoma, tight end. Really just a situational guy, and the situation is good this week as Baltimore is allowing the 2nd most half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. Start him as a tight end 1 if you need one. Joe Mixon's 124 running back touches are 3rd in the NFL, and Cincinnati threw him a season-high 6 targets last week, despite backup running back Chris Evans' explosion in the passing game as well. The Baltimore Ravens are allowing 71.5 receiving yards per game. That is the most in the league. So Joe Mixon, top 3 running back this week. Samaje Perine has been activated off the COVID-19 reserve list, but Chris Evans played really well. I think that they are in a full-blown competition for number 2 running back duty now. Both of them are borderline running back 3/4. As far as the Baltimore Ravens side of things go, as mentioned above, Jackson's CPAE ranking is rating of 3.4%, meaning he's completing 3.4% more passes than the average NFL quarterback, given, whatever situation we're measuring. So that's like distance from nearest pass rusher and distance of separation of the receiver to the cornerback, all averaged in, computer stuff. Anyway, Lamar Jackson, elite quarterback 1, his 63.5 QB rushing yards per game paced the NFL. Rashad Bateman came in, first game of his NFL career, tied tight end Mark Andrews with 6 targets. He gets to run routes against veteran cornerback Eli Apple, who is having a real bad year. I have Bateman as a back-end wide receiver 3 and Marquise Brown as an every week wide receiver 2 with game-breaking ability. Devin Duvernay, only relevant in leagues that award return yardage points, not just touchdowns. He is a wide receiver 6 in normal leagues. Mark Andrews, elite tight end 1. Devonte Freeman is going to lead the charge this week with Latavius Murray registering back-to-back DNPs with an ankle injury. I think it'd be a miracle if he sees more than 12 touches, though. So he's only a high-end running back 3 for week 7. The other 2 guys, Le'Veon Bell and Tyson Williams, are running back 4s. Detroit Lions at Los Angeles Rams. Jared Goff, don't think he's going to do anything against the LA Rams. I've got him quarterback, whatever the worst one is. Quarterback 26 this week. Khalif Raymond, Kadero Hodge, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't start any of them. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown has been playing well, but Jalen Ramsey now covers the slot in nickel packages. That's where Amon-Ra St. Brown runs his routes. Don't even think about it. TJ Hawkinson showed that he is just fine, even though he's rehabbing his injured knee. He went 8 of 11 for 74 yards last week. He is a mid-tier tight end 1. It's a virtual certainty that the Lions are going to be playing from behind this week. So DeAndre Swift is the overall running back 8, while Jamal Williams is the RB 30. Matthew Stafford, elite quarterback 1 this week. The Detroit Lions defense is god awful, and Stafford probably top 6 quarterback. Cooper Kupp is an elite wide receiver 1, and Robert Woods is an elite wide receiver 2. Deshaun Jackson, Van Jefferson should both be used in DFS. They are very volatile wide receiver 4s in redraft. Tyler Higbee, run-of-the-mill, mid to low tight end 1. I did include a Twitter conversation that a couple guys who I really respect had discussing Tyler Higbee's prospects, though. Darrell Henderson. So Sony Michel is battling a shoulder injury right now. So Darrell Henderson Jr. is going to get all the work he can handle, and the Lions are allowing 30.1 half-point PPR points per game to opposing running backs. That's the most in the NFL. Darrell Henderson is my overall running back 2 on the week. Philadelphia Eagles at Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, so in terms of at the Eagle side of things, Jalen Hurts, he's averaging 50 rushing yards per game. Only guy who is beating him is Lamar Jackson. Hurts is an every week elite quarterback 1. Devontae Smith, I think he'll bounce back as a wide receiver 2 this week. The Raiders are missing Trayvon Mullen Jr., perimeter cornerback, who is on injured reserve. I think that they can take advantage of that. Quez Watkins has completely relegated Greg Ward to bench fodder, and I think he deserves wide receiver 4 with wide receiver 3 upside consideration. He actually led the team in targets last week, so get while the getting's good on Quez Watkins. In terms of Jalen Reagor, he is awful and is a wide receiver 6. One nice thing about Quez Watkins' matchup specifically for this week, he's going to tee off against Raiders slot cornerback Nate Hobbs, who has allowed 21 of 24 slot targets to get past him per PFF, good for 151 receiving yards on the year. Dallas Goedert is now the only tight end of note in Philadelphia. He did miss Thursday with an illness, even though he was activated from the COVID-19 reserve list today. So I don't know what to make of that. If active, he is a high-flying tight end 1. The Raiders are allowing the 4th most half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. Miles Sanders, I have him as a high-end running back 3. I think he can finish as a top 24 play. Probably not top 15, but maybe like running back 23. The Raiders front 7 is not good. We discussed that in the 5 guys segment. Kenny Gainwell is a back end running back 3 as the snaps, carries, targets, etc. all bounce back towards Miles Sanders' favor in week 6. Las Vegas Raiders, Derek Carr. Compliments to the chef here on the again the Establish the Run AFC. What do you call it? Team by team recap podcast this week. They pointed out that with John Gruden out of the picture, their offensive coordinator, Greg Olson, no, not that Greg Olson, a different one, launched their play action passing rate to the moon. So, well, not to the moon, to league average, or like a top 12 rate, that is up to 31%. It was 11.5% before, when John Gruden was still calling plays. So that's great for everybody involved. Derek Carr now solidified as a quarterback 1. Henry Ruggs was the obvious beneficiary. He caught 3 of 4 passes for 91 yards and 1 touchdown. Someone who I quote all the time because he's fantastic, Dwayne McFarland. For fantasy purposes, play action targets are worth 10 to 15% more than non-play action targets for pass catchers. So obviously we like downfield guys like Ruggs, who are in play action heavy schemes. Hunter Renfrow going to keep doing his high floor wide receiver 3 thing. I don't like Brian Edwards at all. He's a back end wide receiver 5. Darren Waller. So the Eagles tight end coverage improved drastically when safety Rodney McLeod returned from his ACL reconstruction rehab in week 4, but Darren Waller's down. Darren Waller, I'm sticking with him as an elite tight end 1. Josh Jacobs, we had seen an improvement in passing game usage, but the team is now running with both Kenyon Drake and Jalen Richard on the active roster, which means that Josh Jacobs has to compete with 2 pass-catching running backs for work. So I am relegating Josh Jacobs back down to mid to low running back 2 status. If 6 teams were not in bye, he would be a running back 3. Kenyon Drake is a running back 4. Jalen Richard is a running back 6. Houston Texans at Arizona Cardinals. The only person I'm going to talk about here really is Brandon Cooks. Nico Collins came back and then injured, I believe, his foot last week. So Brandon Cooks is back to his unholy target share. You're not starting Davis Mills here. Don't think about it. And don't start Tyrod Taylor. Don't start Tyrod Taylor either. Brandon Cooks, I've got him as a borderline wide receiver 2/3. Chris Moore, Chris Conley, nope. Jordan Akins, nope. Mark Ingram is the only fantasy relevant back, but the Cardinals are limiting opposing backfields to the 9th fewest half-point PPR points per game. So Ingram is just a high-end running back for Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. Houston's dilapidated pass rush is 3rd worst in the NFL in terms of quarterback pressure rate. So yeah, Kyler Murray, high-end quarterback 1. When it comes to the wide receivers, this is a revenge game for DeAndre Hopkins. Start him as an elite wide receiver 1. They're going to Cliff Kingsbury is the type of coach who is going to let his players get revenge. So yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, elite wide receiver 1 this week. AJ Green has scored double-digit half-point PPR points in 4 of 6 games this year. I think that he is a high-end wide receiver 3 in an above-average matchup. As for Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk, both are running the vast majority of their routes from the slot. We discussed earlier, Rondale Moore's usage is much more dynamic. He's getting backfield reps, both as a rusher and as a receiver, also getting return usage. I think either of these guys can absolutely shred the Houston Texans defensive back group. They have allowed 20+ yard or explosive pass plays on 13% of opponents' passing attempts. That is the 3rd highest rate in the NFL. So I think that's perfect for a player like Rondale Moore, who has game-breaking speed. Both Kirk and Moore are wide receiver 3. Zach Ertz, we don't know how he's going to be used here. The Cliff Kingsbury era has not featured a lot of usage for the tight end position, but he's the only guy there. So you should roster him. And if you need a tight end, you could start him as a streaming option, tight end 1. James Conner, Chase Edmonds. I think this one they're going to keep Chase Edmonds kind of under wraps. He's dealing with the shoulder injury. I think he's going to be super efficient. So I've still got him as rated as like the running back 18, but James Conner is the guy who I think could tear the cover off. The Texans are currently allowing 24.9 half-point PPR points per game to opposing backfields, 8th most in the NFL. Their run defense RDNEFF score is 33.3, dead last in the NFL. Perfect for a rush-centric back like James Conner, who just hoards touches in the red zone and at the goal line. So yeah, I think a multi-touchdown game is on the table here for James Conner. So I have him as a high-end running back 2. I believe I've got him as the running back 14. As far as the Chicago Bears go, I think that this is the week that Justin Fields can actually break out. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were forced to sign and start Richard Sherman. He probably pulled his hamstring because they're so banged up in their quarterback and just overall defensive back group. I think that, Justin Fields, he's a volatile quarterback too, but I think if you are in desperate need of a quarterback too, this is the time to start him. Allen Robinson, volatile wide receiver 2. Darnell Mooney, like pretty good, pretty high upside here as Allen Robinson. Sorry. I think you can consider Allen Robinson the wide receiver 24 and consider Darnell Mooney the wide receiver 23, if that's helpful. As far as the rest of Chicago's pass catching core goes, not interested in any of them. Marquise Goodwin, Jakeem Grant, we're not starting. Cole Kmet. Damien Williams might be able to get activated for Sunday, but he is unvaccinated. And so at the earliest, he has to be isolated for 10 days. That 10-day mark is this Saturday, but then he's got to produce back-to-back negative tests. So I actually don't think he can play. So Khalil Herbert is, I think, locked in as a high-end running back too. Now, it's tough because it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front 7, but he got a bunch of passing game usage. He was running some routes, saw a couple targets. So yeah, I think Khalil Herbert is like full on bell cow on this one. As far as the Tampa Bay side of things goes, Tom Brady is an every week quarterback 1. The Bears front 7 is a little bit banged up. Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack are both nursing injuries, and I believe Robert Quinn went on the COVID-19 reserve list. So yeah, high flying quarterback 1 for Tom Brady. Mike Evans, wide receiver 1. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 2, like probably top 20 play. Antonio Brown, ankle injury, did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. They might rest him, in which case Tyler Johnson would be a viable streaming, top 48 wide receiver. If active, then Antonio Brown is a decent wide receiver 2/3. Rob Gronkowski, checking in on him and his, messed up ribs. Apparently he might be able to start. Now, ignore what Bruce Arians is saying. Rob Gronkowski registered back-to-back DNPs. I don't think that he's going to play. I think that is going to lead to another game where OJ Howard and Cameron Brate split reps. Howard beat out Brate last week, but Brate beat him out the week before. Not thunderously so. OJ Howard is the preferred streaming option of that 1-2 punch. In terms of the backfield, it's the Uncle Lenny show. Leonard Fournette is my running back 7 on the week. The other two guys are like being phased out of the offense at this point. Okay, as far as the Sunday Night Football matchup goes, so Carson Wentz has been playing efficiently. He's not putting up gaudy sums, but he is playing efficiently. And the San Francisco 49ers defense has been vulnerable to opposing passers. They're around top 8 in half-point PPR points per game allowed. I don't think that T.Y. Hilton is going to be able to play. I'm going to look at Carson Wentz as like a mid-range quarterback 2 with maybe top 12 upside. I don't think so. Though T.Y. Hilton T.Y. Hilton has been out each of the last 2 weeks, so I think that Michael Pittman can get back to seeing double-digit targets. Excuse me. I like him as a wide receiver 3. I like Zach Pascal as a high-end wide receiver 4. I'm not interested in Michael Strahan. In terms of the tight end usage, Mo Alley-Cox has continued to kind of operate as the number 1 guy there. Now, again, there are so many mouths to feed that the other guys like Jack Doyle and what is his name? Kylan Granson. They can get into the mix, but I think that Mo Alley-Cox is running as like tight end 10 maybe this week. It's a low volume passing attack though, so look out. As far as the running back situation goes, they have no reason to be doing what they're doing with Marlon Mack. I don't know why so many teams are interested in trading for him because he can't play. Anyway, Jonathan Taylor is a locked-in running back 1. I have Nyheim Hines as a running back 3. Don't bother with Marlon Mack. Even if he goes somewhere, I don't think that he's going to be able to be effective now that he suffered an Achilles rupture. As far as San Francisco 49ers go, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the starter this week with Trey Lance nursing a knee sprain. Debo Samuel locked in wide receiver 1. The Indianapolis Colts cornerback core has been pummeled by injuries. And yeah, Debo Samuel, high flying wide receiver 1. Brandon Ayuk is like DFS only at this point. He's not running very many routes. Or he is out there, but he's not getting looks. It's just like you can't trust him. You also can't trust Mohamed Sanu and Trent Sherfield. So we're not. I can't recommend starting any of those guys other than Brandon Ayuk in DFS. At best, he's a wide receiver 4. In terms of the tight end position, George Kittle is on injured reserve, so we're looking at Ross Dwelley. Ross Dwelley is a mid-range tight end too. As far as the running back position goes, so Eli Mitchell like handily outsnapped Trey Sermon last week. I think that that'll continue to be the case, but J.R. Hasty has been able to get in some work. We don't yet know what his status is going to be, but he might actually play. I think it will be interesting to see if J.R. Hasty is able to fill in, cycle in as a rotational guy in the 10-touch capacity. But again, we don't know if he's going to play. We just need to keep paying attention to the news cycle. Until we get word on that, I have Eli Mitchell ranked as the running back 16 this week. I'm not putting anybody else ahead of, Trey Sermon's RB 46 and Hasty's right behind him. Hasty would probably leapfrog Sermon if he's active, but it's tough to say. And that'll do it, everybody. That is the full Sunday slate. I will be tweeting out my thoughts for the Monday tilt on Twitter over the weekend, so everybody pay attention to that. But otherwise, thank you all so much. I hope that you guys guys and gals, enjoyed the injury analysis at the beginning. That's kind of stuff that I want to keep doing on here. We're going to have another injury specialist on the show next week. I'm extremely excited for. And again, Adam, thank you so much for coming on here, man. It was a real delight talking to you. And I hope everybody goes and follows him. Again, that is the real Adam _H on Twitter. I am Ginger __Nick, spelled NIC. Find us at nerdballff.com.